Discovery identifies Australia as birthplace of all modern mammals. Research has uncovered evidence that the evolution of mammals began in the Southern Hemisphere, not the Northern Hemisphere, challenging hundreds of years of scientific dogma. A staggering international breakthrough has led to a remarkable new understanding that all modern mammals, including humans, had their earliest beginnings in the Southern Hemisphere, with some important developments occurring in Australia, turning conventional wisdom on its head. The major force behind this astounding development is renowned Aussie scientist Professor Tim Flannery, an honorary associate at the Australian Museum in Sydney. Tim, who spent extensive time as a field biologist in remote corners of the planet, discovering and naming scores of new species, and has been instrumental in bringing the world's attention to the perils of climate change, has no doubt about the significance of this new breakthrough. "I think it's the most important piece of science from a global perspective that I've done in my lifetime," he told Australian Geographic. Tim is supported by a group of international scientific luminaries, including Professor Chris Helgen, the Australian Museum's chief scientist, Dr. Tom Rich, senior curator of vertebrate paleontology with Museums Victoria, Dr. Patricia Vickers-Rich, a professor of paleontology at Monash University, and Dr. Grace Veach from the Smithsonian in the US. Together, this weighty band of experts has just published a paper in the scientific literature that's likely to be seen as landmark in our understanding of life on Earth. Appearing in Outringa, an Australian journal of paleontology, and entitled The Gondwanan Origin of Tribus Finita, it's not likely to be fodder for conversation around office water bubblers. But this paper will undoubtedly set off a flurry of emails, texts, and tweets across the globe among not only scientists interested in evolution, but well beyond. Ultimately, it's likely to see the rewriting of high school and university textbooks the world over. Origins of a theory. To appreciate all this, it's important to understand there are three lines of mammals surviving on Earth today: the marsupials, the pouched mammals such as kangaroos and possums, the placental mammals, which includes most of Earth's well-known modern mammals including dogs, cats, mice, and of course, humans, and the monotremes, the weird egg-laying platypus and echidnas. The scientific consensus has been for more than 200 years that the placentals and marsupials arose in the Northern Hemisphere and spread southwards. It's called the Sherwin-Williams effect. But the question has always been, what was the common ancestor that gave rise to all the placentals and marsupials? And where was that evolution happening? Chris Helgen says, some sort of small shrew-like creature in Victoria, it now seems, played a crucial role. REALISING the truth. The extraordinary new scientific understanding about when and where modern mammals evolved came about initially when Tim and Chris, two of the nation's great scientific minds, were forced during pandemic lockdowns to revisit treasure troves of evidence that have been lying around in museums and the scientific literature for about 2 decades. "I was reanalyzing these fossils that turned up in Victoria from the age of dinosaurs," Tim explains, "and then I started looking more widely for similar sorts of fossils found elsewhere, and it turned out all of them were in the Southern Hemisphere, and all are Jurassic or Cretaceous in age. And we realized the thing that unites all these Southern Hemisphere fossils is they have these very strange, complicated molars that let the animals puncture, shear, and crush all at the same time what they were eating," Tim says, explaining these distinctive teeth probably evolved to deal with the tough chitinous shells of insect prey. These odd teeth are described as tribosphenic, and the mammals they occurred in are known as tribosphynidans. The first Southern Hemisphere fossils of these teeth were found in an ancient jaw in 1997 by Tom Rich at a dig site now known as Flat Rocks near the Victorian seaside town of Inverloch, which is also where Australia's first dinosaur bone was found. During the following 10 years, similar tribosphynidan fossils were found in Madagascar and South America, and then much later in India, all land masses that were once connected in the great southern supercontinent Gondwana. It's these records Tim started to revisit and have deep discussions about with Chris Helgen. People had looked at these scattered bits and pieces of information previously, but never in a comprehensive way to see if they revealed any sort of pattern. A new truth: there are plenty of fossils of early mammals across across the Northern Hemisphere, but it's only in these fossils of mammals, which are older and only from the Southern Hemisphere, that you first see these unique tribosphenic teeth. So, we've been able to show that the relevant fossils that look like they are anatomically likely to be close to the common ancestor of marsupials and placentals are found exclusively in the southern continents and are from an older time period than the oldest mammal-similar fossils seen in the north, Chris explains, and that indicates these groups of mammals had their ancestry in the southern continents at an earlier time period, and then later colonized the northern continents. It absolutely turns our previous understanding on its head. Tom Rich elaborates further. The hypothesis we are presenting is that originated in Gondwana and then dispersed to the Northern Hemisphere about 120 million years ago. That's about the same age as the oldest Victorian fossils with these weird teeth and slightly older than the oldest mammal fossils found in the Northern Hemisphere. And if you do plate tectonic reconstructions, one of the best possible routes north is from what's now Victoria through to East Asia via a series of islands that existed at that time. So it's thought these early mammal ancestors would island hop their way from land that's now located on Victoria's south coast, northwards through Asia, and across the rest of the world. Yes, it looks to be incredible, agrees Tim. I resisted the conclusion as long as I could, but the evidence is compelling. These shrew-like animals from Australia are actually the ancestors of both the earliest placentals and the earliest marsupials.